All right, we'll sully the waters a little bit. You're talking about some of the other laws that don't apply in the in-goal area, and the one is the ability to score a try from outside the field of play.
Yeah, and there's an interesting clip going around online at the moment where it happened in the UK, and what happens is basically if the ball is kicked into the in-goal area and a player is diving for the ball, so as long as they don't take possession of the ball, they can actually dive from and have part of their body outside the field of play or outside the touchline and ground the ball as long as the ball stays in the in-goal area. And they ground the ball without taking possession, then it's a fair try. It's just one of those wee anomalies, which there is a few around when the ball's in and when the ball's out around the touchline. You know, we've got, sort of 68 to 70 metres wide of the field, but there are times when extra space can be utilised.
It is weird because everywhere else, you touching the ball makes it out.
Yep, indeed, and it's all about, in a lot of cases, where the ball is in relation to the touchline. Some of the scenarios are very clear. If part of you or your body is out and you take possession of the ball, it's clear the ball is out. But if the ball does not cross an imaginary line, like if you imagine a sheet of glass going up from the touchline and the ball stays on the infield side of that, then there are options for players who are standing outside to tap the ball back and prevent it from going out, again, as long as they don't take possession of it. But if that ball has crossed that imaginary line and is outside that line, then your body, your feet or whatever, must stay in the field of play for the entire time that you drag that ball back in.
Or you can go out and then jump back in, as long as you land back in, which is nearly impossible.
Almost, yeah. So it's one of those sort of scenarios that you do see it a wee bit, and you could argue from the crowd point of view, often there's a difference of opinion, but hopefully the referee and the AR are in line with that to make an accurate judgment.
Can you be offside outside of the field of play?
Yes, so that's the same laws around advancing in front of kickers and things still apply. So regardless of, if you're outside the touchline, and you often do see players at either a kick-off or a penalty kick, they may actually choose to run a metre outside the field of play to get upfield, but they still must be behind that kick when it occurs in order to advance.
Okay, let's talk about the difference between trying to catch a ball in an intercept and what appears to be an intentional knock-on, and sometimes it seems to be deemed a cynical foul in the card even, and other times it's not. So tell us how you make that judgment.
Yeah, and I guess starting with from a yellow card type perspective is if it's deemed to be cynical and deliberate, and often that's in in that sort of within the 22 area where it's clearly denying the other team that opportunity to play, and the referee's thinking cynical and deliberate or intentional, they probably are going to go yellow in those type of scenarios. It can even be a penalty try if that was the only action, and say if that ball was about to be put out to the winger who would otherwise be unmarked, and then a player knocks the ball down deliberately, you can even be looking at penalty try in those type scenarios. But if the player, just knocks it down in the middle of the field and there was plenty of defenders left there and things, then a penalty may be sufficient. Sometimes it's a bit of a judgment call we sort of talk more about whether the player's movement is an upward type motion, then it may be deemed just a knock on. But certainly if it's if the intent is negative, which is generally that downwards type motion, you're definitely looking at penalty, if not a card, depending on the circumstance.
So catch it with two hands or try and catch it with two hands would be more a convincing argument.
Yeah, and certainly, if two hands are out there, it looks a lot better. And generally you could argue that they are at least making an attempt to catch the ball, whereas with one hand it's very difficult to catch a pass at speed with one hand.
Another area that's come up for discussion is the contesting the ball in the air. Two players go for it. The player underneath the player that's above, if you know what I mean, can often interfere with the path down, and it looks unsafe. But so when you're looking at the referee point of view, are you looking at where they're looking or what their intent is? What's the judgment call on that?
Yeah, and it's kind of from a safety aspect, everything's sort of been flipped totally around to the player in the air going for the ball is pretty much to be untouched, and there's still a place in the game for two players, one from each team, to genuinely go up for the ball and try and contest that. But generally, they should both be at least looking at the ball, both in the air, and pretty much one or both would try and gain possession of the ball at that time. Often it's where you see one player get up in the air and the other one either just runs through and clips them on the way through, or even worse, makes the tackle while they are still coming back down with the ball. Those sort of situations too, where it's a bit like the tip tackle, where in a lot of cases you're almost starting at a red card and talking yourself backwards in that situation. That the player in the air, safety is paramount, so a minimum of a penalty if they're interfered with. But thinking, right, if the player comes through and they're effectively defenceless while they're in the air if they do get tackled. So a lot of it is around, the player runs through and cleans them out and swings them round, then that's at the serious end. If the player gets his feet back to ground and then you can line up the timing of your tackle, no issue with that. Once the player's feet are on the ground again, at least he's got an opportunity to brace himself. And then even, you could argue it's accidental contact in a lot of places, but that should still be penalised just purely on the safety angle.
Let's take the situation where the guy does take the catch, he comes to ground on his feet and immediately embraced by the opposition players. Now, there's a rule that says because it's a catch, he has to get an opportunity to play it, is that right?
So when he takes the ball and comes to ground, if a maul forms directly from the kick, except for a kick-off, then there's no turnover in that maul. So it's just to give, I guess, a fair opportunity that, you could argue that player didn't have a chance to set and position himself and things. So from a kick, if it gets tied up in a maul, it stays with that team, as opposed to any other maul becomes a turnover if it doesn't come out. So it's really just giving that, I guess, an opportunity that teams will engage in that. But no, they certainly don't have to let him play it. They can wrap the ball up, but there just wouldn't be a turnover.
Did you say there's an exception at kick-off?
From a kick-off, then it's irrelevant. So that they talk about with direct from a kick, except for a kick-off or a 22 restart.
Just another little exception?
Yep.
Okay, so it's only talking about kicks in general play that are safe from that.
Yep. Yep.
Why is that?
Oh, that's
I don't ask you to explain the laws, mate. I didn't explain the law, but it is bizarre, isn't it? That, some kicking. I never knew.
Yeah, and then there's a few things in law where kicks in general play and restart kicks are treated slightly differently at times.